Good morning, children. Today we are going to continue with the same chapter, The Enemy, chapter number 4 from our book Vistas, and this is page number 39, as you can see on your screens. And this is the last paragraph of page number 39. And we read in the last class that Hana was a little bit worried because when she noticed that a messenger had come in official uniform, she had a kind of suspicion. She had a doubt that maybe he had come to arrest Sadao. And she ran towards Dr. Sadao's room and wanted to tell him that somebody had, you can say, come to meet him. But before she could reach Dr. Sadao, the messenger had reached there, and then he at last told them that he had come to ask Dr. Sadao to come as soon as possible to the palace of the old general, because old general required Dr. Sadao's services, and because Dr. Sadao was looking after the old general, and as a doctor he had to come to the palace. And then at last they actually became, you can say, happy. They really took a sigh of relief after you can say knowing, after noticing that he had not come to arrest them or arrest him. Now page number 40, the first paragraph I am going to read. And what actually happened? I thought they had come to arrest you, she said. Hana said that because she had a suspicion, she thought that the man had come to arrest Dr. Sadao. He gazed down into her anxious eyes. Now, Dr. Sadao noticed that Hana had anxious eyes. Anxious means very, you can say, worried. She was very worried. I must get rid of this man for your sake, he said in distress. And at last, Dr. Sadao, in distress, in pain, he said that he really wanted to get rid of this situation. Get rid of means he wanted to get free from this man as soon as possible. Somehow, I must get rid of him. And he went away. Sadao goes to see the general, and at last Dr. Sadao went to meet the general. He wanted to see the general, and he went to his palace. Of course, the general said weakly, but when he met the general said in a very weak voice. Why? Because general was not fine. He was not healthy physically. So he said, of course, I understand fully, but that is because I once took a degree in Princeton, so few Japanese have. Means the general was actually boasting of himself, and he said that he dinge हाँक रहा है एक तरीके से. The general said that he had got a degree that very few Japanese had got. I care nothing for the man, Excellency, Dr. Sadao said. But Dr. Sadao actually wanted to tell this fact to the general, and he had shared that he had saved the life of an American soldier, and he also wanted to tell them that he had no other will, he had no other intention but to hand him over to the police or to the army when the man would be fit. I care nothing for the man, Excellency, but having operated on him with such success means because he had operated on him, because he had saved his life, now he wanted to, you can say, have some kind of advice from the general. Yes, the general said. It only makes me feel you more indispensable to me. Evidently, you can save anyone. You are so skilled. Now, this shows that general really believed that this man, means Dr. Sadao, was an indispensable man to him. What is the meaning of indispensable? Indispensable means essential, very significant, very important. According to the general, because Dr. Sadao had saved even a man who was almost dying, that is why general thought that Dr. Sadao was the best surgeon in Japan, and that is why he thought that for his own life, for general's life, his presence was very important. Dr. Sadao should not go anywhere, and anything should not happen to him, according to general, because for general's life it is very important that Dr. Sadao should be safe. Evidently, you can say save anyone. You are so skilled. This shows that he believed that Dr. Sadao was such a skilled man. He was such a skilled surgeon and doctor. He could save anybody's life. You say you think I can stand one more such attack as I have had today. Means on that day he had an attack, and now he had told Dr. Sadao had told the general that maybe he is going to have another attack after this. Not more than when Dr. Sadao said. Dr. Sadao said he could only bear only one attack after this, and after that he would die. Then certainly I can allow nothing to happen to you. Now this shows that the general was such a selfish man. He was such a self-centered man that just because he wanted to save his life, he did not want anything to happen to डॉक्टर सदाओ, क्योंकि उसको लगता है कि डॉक्टर सदाओ उसकी जान बचा सकता है. So he says that he could not allow anything happen to him, to Dr. Sadao. The general said with anxiety. Anxiety here means with pain, with worry, he said this. His long, pale Japanese face became expressionless, which meant that he was in deep thought. You cannot be arrested. And then after thinking about Dr. Sadao and what would happen to him if he would be arrested because he had saved the life of an American. So then who would be there to save general's life? So he said, you cannot be arrested. This again shows that the general was a selfish man. He said, you cannot be arrested, closing his eyes. Suppose you were condemned to death. Means if you would be asked, if you would be arrested, according to the general, if Dr. Sadao will be arrested and he would be hanged to death, and the next day I had to have my operation, means who is going to save him if he would be you can say punished by the law? There are other surgeons, Excellency, Sadao, but Sadao was such a humble man, very noble man, and he said there were some other surgeons who could save his life, general's life. None I trust, but this shows that general did not trust anyone except Dr. Sadao. उसको किसी पे भी विश्वास नहीं है. The best ones have been trained by Germans and would consider the operation successful even if I died. According to the general, all other you can say surgeons, they were trained in Germany and he did not trust them, because according to them, even if a patient would die, they would say that the operation was successful. He sighed. It seems a pity that we cannot better combine the German ruthlessness with the American sentimentality. Then you could turn your prisoner over to execution, and yet I could be sure you would not murder me while I was unconscious. The general laughed. Means general actually had a joke that he knew that Dr. Sadao is going to save his life and he is not going to do anything silly with the general, and he had an unusual sense of humor. As a Japanese, could you not combine these two foreign elements, he asked. Dr. Sadao smiled. I am not quite sure, sir, but for your sake I would be willing to try, Excellency. Means according to Dr. Sadao, he was trying his best to save the life of the general, and he would, you can say, leave no stone unturned in his efforts or endeavors. The general shook his head. I had rather not be the test case, he said. General said that he should not be tested. No experimentation should be done by Dr. Sadao on him. He felt suddenly weak and overwhelmed with the cares of his life as an official in times such as these, when repeated victory brought great responsibilities all over the South Pacific. It is very unfortunate that this man should have washed up on your doorstep, he said irritably. And at last, the old general, showed his concern about Dr. Sadao, and he said that Dr. Sadao was very unfortunate to have that man washed up on his doorstep. Means it was really unlucky on his part that he actually found the patient near his house. Sadao said gently, I feel it so myself. Means he also felt like saying, it would be best if he could be quietly killed, the general said. Now, General actually suggested that the best way to get rid of this situation was to get him killed. Means the man should be killed. And this is page number 41. According to the general, the best way टू गेट आउट ऑफ दिस सिचुएशन, इस सिचुएशन से बचने का एक ही तरीका है, और वो क्या है? दैट टॉम और दैट अमेरिकन सोल्जर शुड बी किल्ड. The general suggested, not by you, but by someone who does not know him. I have my own private assassins. What is the meaning of assassins? Assassins means killers. So he suggested, the old general suggested to Dr. Sadao that he, means the general, had his private killers. Suppose I send two of them to your house tonight, or better, any night. You need know nothing about it. It is now warm. What would be more natural than that you should leave the outer partition of the white man's room open to the garden while he sleeps? Means he suggested that he would send some assassins, some killers would be sent by general to Dr. Sadao's house, and because it was summer and it was really warm, so they could let open the back door from the garden, towards the garden, open at night, and his assassins, his killers, would enter his room, the American's room, and the American would be killed by the killers, who would be sent by the general. Certainly it would be very natural. Sadao agreed. And look at this. Sadao agreed to a suggestion of killing the man who was saved by Sadao. Sadao has saved the life of this man, and now he was making a plan to get him killed. Certainly it would be very natural. In fact, it is so left open every night. Means it is, we generally gets the, or let the back door open every night. So it was very natural, and the general could send his assassins to get him killed. Good, the general said, yawning. They are very capable assassins. They make no noise. Means the general said that the assassins, they were very trained killers, and they would make no noise, and they know the trick of inward bleeding also. They knew that they should not get, you can say, anybody killed with a lot of blood. So if they would kill somebody, there would be no blood spots to be seen. If you like, I can even have them remove the body, and at the same time these people, these assassins, would kill the American, and at the same time his body would be taken away. They would remove the body also. Sadao considered that perhaps would be best, Excellency. He agreed, thinking of Hana. And at last, Dr. Sadao considered it a very good plan, and he agreed to the suggestion given by the old general. He left the general's presence then and went home, thinking over the plan. In this way, the whole thing would be taken out of his hands. He would tell Hana nothing. Means after meeting general, Dr. Sadao went back home, and he thought that he would not tell anything to Hana, since she would be timid. Because she would be timid here means he would be afraid at the idea of assassins in the house. Means if she would be told that some killers would come and kill the American, then she would be really, you can say, full of fright. She would become very timid after that. And that is why he wanted to hide this fact from Hana. And yet certainly such persons were essential in an absolute state such as Japan was. How else could rulers deal with those who opposed them? And at the same time, Dr. Sadao was thinking that these kind of killers were really necessary for these kind of people like general, because they wanted to have their authority in society. He refused to allow anything but reason to be the atmosphere of his mind. Now this is very important line. What is the meaning of this line? And what is the meaning of reason here? When Dr. Sadao was going back home, he actually did not want to listen to his feelings. He was not listening to his own voice. He was just thinking like a practical man. and that is why he was just using his brain, his reason. But his heart was maybe asking him to save the life of that man. He should not be murdered because he saved his life, and now he was making a plan to get him murdered, to get him killed. And but he was just for the sake of Hana, just because he did not want to see Hana in pain now. That is why he made a plan, and he succumbed to this kind of evil plan as he went into the room where the American was in bed. But as he opened the door, to his surprise, he found the young man was out of bed and preparing to go into the garden. But he was surprised when he went into the American's room. He found that the man was not there and he was trying to go into the garden. Means he was getting fine. He was becoming more fit now. What is this? He exclaimed. Who gave you permission to leave your room? I'm not used to waiting for permission. Means Dr. Sadao asked him that he was not permitted to go anywhere. He could not go out of his room. It was not permitted. But Tom, means that American, he said that he was not, you can say, waiting. He generally does not wait for the permission because he was an army personnel, and he could do anything. Gosh, I feel pretty good again, but will the muscles on this side always feel stiff? Means he was getting better, but some of his muscles, one part of his body was really hard, and he really wanted that how this part of the body would become, you can say, fine. Is it so? Sadao inquired, surprised. He forgot all else. Means after knowing that some of the body parts were stiff or hard, he actually, you can say, showed his consideration, and he wanted to check what kind of stiffness he had got in his body. Now I thought I had provided against that. And Dr. Sadao said that it should not be there because he had provided some of the things which would cure this stiffness also. He lifted the man of the edge of the man's shirt and gazed at the healing scar. And then he actually put away his shirt and started looking or investigating the scars or the wounds which he had on the body. This is page number 42. Massage may do it, and he suggested, Dr. Sadao suggested that he just needed some massage, and after the massage Tom would be very much fine. There would be no stiffness in his body if exercise does not. It would not bother me much, the young man said. But the young man here means the American said that he does not bother. Bother here means he was not troubled. Chinta ki baat nahi hai, and he was not afraid of this kind of, you can say, stiffness now. His young face was gaunt under the stubbly blonde beard. What is the meaning of stubbly blonde beard? Means this man, young man, this American, he had a very, you can say, blonde hair means golden colored beard on his face. भूरे रंग की दाढ़ी थी उसके face पे, and at the same time his face was very gaunt. Gaunt hair means very weak, very lean and thin. Say, doctor, I have got something I want to say to you. If I had not met a Jap like you, Jap here means Japanese like you, well, I would not be alive today. I know that. Means this American, he actually wanted to thank Dr. Sadao. He said that if this man would not have met with Dr. Sadao, then he would not be alive, because only Dr. Sadao was a different kind of Japanese and he had some humanity inside him, but other Japanese would have killed him. So he was quite lucky to meet a Jap or a Japanese like Dr. Sadao. Sadao bowed, but he could not speak. Means Sadao acknowledged. He listened, but he did not speak anything. Sure, I know that, Tom went on warmly, and then again repeated. Tom said that he knew it, and he actually meant it. His big thin hands gripping a chair were white at the knuckles. I guess if all the Japs were like you, there would not have been a war. And this is a glowing comment. that was given to Dr. Sadao by the American, and the American said that if all the Japanese would have been like Dr. Sadao, then maybe there would have been no war. Perhaps, Sadao said with difficulty, and now I think you had better go back to bed. And but Dr. Sadao did not want to have any conversation with him, and he was not interested to listening to his views, and he asked him to sleep. He helped the boy back into the bed and then bowed goodbye, and he said good night. Sadao slept badly that night. Why? What is the meaning of this line? Sadao could not sleep, you can say, easily that night. Why? Because he was thinking of the killers or the assassins, because he expected the assassins to come and kill the American. Time and time again he woke, thinking he heard the rustling of footsteps. Means time and time means after some time he was just having, you can say, a kind of idea that maybe somebody had entered their house, or somebody was walking in the garden, and the sound of a twig broken or a stone displaced in the garden. Means all these noises were heard by him, and he expected that the assassins or the killers had come. A noise such as men might make who carried a burden. Then he also thought that some people, they were actually carrying a burden on their shoulders, and they were walking out of the house. All these things were imagined by Dr. Sadao. The next morning, he made the excuse to go first into the guest room. If the American were gone, then he could simply tell Hana that the general had directed. Means he thought that if the very next morning he went to the room just to see whether the American had gone or he was missed or not, and if he would not be there in the room, means he would have been killed by the killers. And then he tell some of the things to Hana also. He explained everything. He would explain everything to Hana if the American was gone. But when he opened the door, he saw at once that there was on the pillow was the shaggy blonde head. Means the American was still there. He had not gone. He was not killed. He could hear the peaceful breathing of sleep, and he closed the door again gently. And when he opened the door, Dr. Sadao noticed that the American was still sleeping, and he had a very sound sleep, and he was not killed that night. He is asleep, he told Hana. He's almost well to sleep like that. And he told Hana that the American was sleeping. What shall we do with him? Hana whispered her old refrain. Refrain generally means जिसको हम बोलते हैं राग अलापना. तो again and again Hana was asking the same question. And what was that question? That what they are going to do with the American. Sadao shook his head. I must decide in a day or two. And Sadao said that in a single day or in 2 days he is going to decide what they are going to do with this man. But certainly he thought the second night must be the night. Means for the next night he again was waiting for the assassins to come. Then rose a wind that night, and he listened to the sounds of bending bows and whistling partitions. But the second night was a windy night. Means there was a lot of wind, a strong wind was blowing. And Hana woke too. Ought we not to go and close the sick man's partition? She asked. Means Hana actually wanted that Dr. Sadao should go and close the back door because it was a windy night, and they should close the American's door, the room where the American was residing. Hana woke too. Ought we not to go and close the sick man's partition? Sadao said no, he is able now to do it for himself. Means Dr. Sadao suggested that no, they should not enter or they should not disturb him. If he would want to close the door, he could do it himself. But the next morning the American was still there. Then the third night, means the next morning also the American was there. It means no assassins had come the second night also. Then the third night, of course, might be the night, he thought. The wind changed to quite rain. Means the next day it was a rainy night, and now he thought that maybe the man would come, or the assassins would come, and the man would be American would be killed. The wind changed to quiet rain, and the garden was full of the sound of dripping eaves and running springs. Sadao slept a little better, but he woke at the sound of a crash and leaped to his feet. Means the third night, Dr. Sadao was sleeping, but then he heard a crashing sound coming from outside. What was that? Hannah cried. The baby woke at her voice and began to wail. I must go and see. Means Hannah heard that sound and she said to her husband that she wanted to go out and she should see who was there outside. But he held her and would not let her move. But Dr. Sadao held her hand in his hands, and he did not allow her to go out of the room because he thought that they were killers. There were killers outside. But he held her. Sadao, she cried, what is the matter with you? But Dr. Sadao muttered in a low voice. He said, don't go, don't go. His terror infected her and she stood breathless. Means Hannah did not know what was happening, and Dr. Sadao thought that the man would be getting killed, or maybe the assassins had come, and that is why he did not allow Hannah to go out of the room. There was only silence. Together they crept back into the bed, the baby between them. Means they actually went back to the bed and they sat on the bed for some time. Yet when he opened the door of the guest room in the morning, there was the young man. But next morning, even after the third night, when Dr. Sadao went to the American's room and expected the man would be lost, he again saw the same face, the same American inside the room. Nothing had happened that night also. He was very gay. And what is the meaning of gay here? Gay means happy. Means who is he here? Tom. The American was very happy and gay and had already washed and now on his feet. Means he had taken a wash also. He had taken a bath and now he was standing on his feet. He had asked for a razor yesterday and had shaved himself, and today there was a faint color in his cheeks. Means the man was really getting fine. He had color in his cheeks. Means he again was getting fine. He was getting blood in his body back. So this is the end of the today's session. Tomorrow we are going to continue from the page number 43 again. Till then, stay safe, take a very good care of yourself. Goodbye and stay learning.